All right, so here we are in week 14, and boy, is it going fast. It's only 4 weeks of the semester. So, what I want to talk about in this attendance is really we're going to go over the problem set. But before we do, and kind of leading into there, is I first want to talk about the technical interview grade impact. Because one of the really important things is we're at a place in the semester, and I'm going to pull over. And by the way, you can find this schedule in, I believe it's after week 9 and before week 10, but it's where the technical interview signups were, and it's ultimately where I grade that item. But if I roll over here, I can see, we're in week 14, but actually in the RL, the real world, I'm in week 13. I'm always working a week ahead. So in this case, you can see how many students have signed up already through the semester and how many are signed up for now. But I do want to make you aware that after week 14, you only have one attempt per person after we roll past 14. And that's important because there have been a handful of students that have taken advantage of the two attempt options, and for what they've told me, have been grateful to have that option. But know that that option is coming towards an end. Now, why am I talking about this? Because there may be some of you in a position that you're like, you know what, I'm not even going to do the technical interview. And because I actually did, I believe, talk about this, is it a requirement? Well, it really depends on your grade, right? And so this led me to think about having a discussion about your grade. So I'm going to bring over my look at Canvas and a test student. Now, I can't update these numbers right now, or I would. But in this case, when you're looking at your grade, I hope you know that you can actually come in here and enter the what if grade. And the what if grade is really helpful because what it can tell you is what if I do this work late? So if I know that I'm doing something late and if I do all the work required, I can get up to 75 points out of 100. Now you can also use late passes. You will see that when you use a late pass, I do something like this. I do 1 so that you know you use it there. So if you have dot 1 and dot 2, you've used them. That way you know if you've used them. And then if you go to tutoring, you can also use them. Now, in that instance, if somebody used it, it would actually be something like that, assuming they got all the points, right? So I just want you to know that concept, because at this point in the semester, students may be wondering, hey, what if I want to get this grade in this class? And I don't get this question as much as I used to, I think because of this feature in Canvas, which I think is great. But if you don't know about it, I want you to know about it. And then the thing I've really brought you here to talk about is that this technical interview is worth 25% of your grade. And if for some reason you don't think, based on your schedule or other reasons that I'll mention in a minute, like it's just when you think about coming into a session with me and it just creates nervousness, which is not the intent. The technical interview is really to help to have me assess how well you've translated the concepts in this class, and you're in a technical field and doing a technical interview is very common. So having an experience is good. But if for some reason you're not, you're just like, I can't make it happen, then come down here. And actually, even if you are planning on doing it, I want you to know right now, like if you put 0 here, we're in the what if, right? Then know the impact of that in your overall grade, because you don't want to wait, right? Again, as we move closer towards the end of the semester, to understand what that impact is, okay? So do that. You don't have to talk about it in the reply, okay? But if you do have any questions about, in this semester in the technical interview, that would be a fine place. Don't ask me specific questions about, and I don't think you would, but in case that, you can always, inbox me questions about that stuff. Okay, so now I want to talk about that. This is a warning. I'm going to do this warning before we get into talking about the problem set for this week. Is there something that if you were to, and I don't recommend, I actually see a handful of students a semester using AI more to actually do their work than to learn from it, which is the way I've been trying, well, not trying, the way I've been talking about using it. And part of the reason I've increased the percentage of the overall grade for the technical interview is because it is very hard to assess students in the world that we live. And you really want to have this skill. I understand that the Gen AI can write a lot of SQL for sure, but you need to know how to evaluate that SQL and how to write it on your own. And I'm saying this because if for some reason you decide, you know what, I don't have enough time and I'm just going to go get the answer, right? By the way, not a good idea. In this case, in addition to all the reasons I've mentioned, is that Gen AI will most likely generate something called a composite key, a composite primary key, which is a combination of a foreign and a primary key. And that's not part of the correct solution, nor is it part of what we covered or what was covered by Carter in CS50 so far. Now, by the way, going forward, as you increase in your SQL knowledge, I hope you do increase it. Using that is fine. It's just for this problem set, it's not. Okay. And I hope you do. By the way, SQL skill set really valuable in the marketplace still, even with Gen AI, because it's understanding how to relate, how to query the data, and data is king in many areas, even in Gen AI circles. So skill you want to have if you're using AI to get answers and not just to learn, you're not helping yourself. Okay, so just warning, if you do that, it's not part of a correct solution. It will be definitely marked down. Now, let's talk about this last problem set. And by the way, we only really have 2 problem sets left, because after this problem set, then we'll do 2 weeks of writing and then 1 more problem set. So this will be one next to the last one that we do. So let's go look at it. So let's actually go look over here. So here's the structure. Do make sure you put this in the right place, and I'll just show you, right? So in this case, having that at the same level, way important, okay? And inside of there, you'll create donut.sql, copy a previous SQL file, and update for donut, your proof of work to be here, and then commit with setup. Now, in this case, this is a problem set we're not going to use a traditional POE. You're going to actually include comments, because POEs are really meant for your effort. And in this case, you're going to have to use comments in your SQL file, your donut.sq, to actually explain where your design meets the requirements. Okay, and I'll talk about this as we move forward. So I'm just telling you, this is different than what we've done in the past, because your effort before showed me how much effort you took to write the query. This shows me how well you understood the concepts of designing and how well you've applied them here. Okay, so now let's look at the CS50. I already have it up. Okay, so in this case, the CS50, you're going to create a database, right, for a donut, the Union Square Donut Shop. Don't use their file name, use the one I've given you. And you're going to create table for day-to-day operations of a donut shop, right? And so what you're going to do here is you're going to, and here's what you have, is you have the expectation. Well, expectations are the team's expectations for their database. And by the way, this skill level right here, I've done this to where I've had to interview people to understand their needs and then create a database around it. Such a really good skill. Because you need to know how to first understand their business, and then how to take those requirements and write databases to meet them. This idea of database design is, and I think I said this a week or so ago, is a step up from actually just knowing how to query, which is also good. Okay. So what they're going to give you here is the ingredients. Here's the requirements for the ingredients. Here's the requirements for the donuts, the orders, and the customers. Now, each of these major categories may have 1 or more tables that you need to meet the requirement. Okay, and you'll see in a minute what I'm going to require as far as the way you're going to do this. And we're going to move this through in a couple of waves. So we'll like do ingredients and donuts. We'll do orders and customers, okay? And then there'll be a sample data. So you see how this gives you a way to to see how well your design met the requirement, okay? All right, so let's now that we understand what we're doing, let's go back to my requirements, okay? So we reviewed this, and in the folder, we will end up creating the donut database because that's what we have to do because this database does not exist now. You can do this at step 1 so that you've actually, we saw that you actually need to write SQL once you've created the database, right? Now, in your comments, because you're writing a create table here, right? So based on your understanding of the requirements, write SQL that will create one or more tables. So I haven't said for this, right? So you're going to do tables that meet this requirement. So what that means is you need to really understand the requirements that for this, right, that they're laying out for you. All right. Now, coming back here. All right, so now in your SQL file, and I'll show you an example of this, and I've provided it in attendance, you can use comments, and I've actually shown you 2 ways to do comments in a minute, to identify, right, the requirements that your table or tables design satisfies, right, identify the requirements that your table design satisfies, including table and or column constraints. So let me show you, and you can look in attendance. I actually took the swipes database or table that we created at the end of this part 2, and I gave some content to give you an example here, okay, of what this would look like, right? So it satisfies these requirements, and then there were actually comments on each of the columns that were created as well. And of course, all of this needs to be documented. This is how, right, you say how well you understand or how you're applying the requirements to create your design is taking that into account, okay? Okay, so once you've done that, so let's go back here, right? Go back here. So now that I've talked about the requirements, oh yeah, I was going to show you because I actually did this. You actually can, in SQL, you can actually do what's called a block comment. And this is the way you do it if you wanted to not just have to do every line like this. You don't have to. I don't require this. I just wanted you to know that this is kind of a nice way. We call these block. So if you had a whole block of text you wanted to put on there as a comment, because remember, in an SQL file, you do, having, like, if I was to have this uncommented, that's going to throw an error. So remember, adding these comments in here does add to make, a bit of making sure you have commands correctly. And this is how the code space makes this really nice because you can see that comments are in green. I just wanted to show you. There's other ways to do it. We call these block comments. Okay. Now, and this is what I was saying about the comments. Doesn't have to be long. It can be modified, and this is an important thing. It can be modified as you move into other requirements because you may just think, okay, once you see some of the other requirements, and specifically when you see the sample data, you may need to come back here and change this, right? So in this case, once you have the SQL ready, you run your proof of work, and then your get workflow, and then first draft of donuts and ingredients, okay? Then do the same for orders, okay? First draft, same for customers, right? So I grouped these 2 together, because there's 4, right? So we go look, there's ingredients, donuts, orders, and customers. Okay, so that's how I've grouped those together. And actually, these are not grouped, just this first one. Okay, so but for each of them, you have to give me the. So now we'll just scroll down and look. The comments are worth 50, right? Right. The queries and the comments themselves are a big part of this. Having the commits, of course, is important. Having your proof of work is important in the URL. So now at that point, if you wanted, you could take a break. Remember, please do tell me you're taking a break. Otherwise, I do a full review. I do a partial review for that. And now what you're going to do by Thursday, unless you do it all in one setting, is now you have to take into consideration the data. Okay. All right. So what you want to do is think through here and see if your database could represent the sample data that you're giving you. This is really how they're helping you check. Now, in this case, there may be a few of you that think, hey, I'm going to go actually have Gen AI write a query to put this data in there. And if you do, just don't have it in your work because I don't want to see it. But you somewhere else could go look at that if you wanted to. But really, what you want to do is just look through here. And the chances are probably pretty good. You'd probably have to modify something because you didn't take that into consideration or you didn't realize the impact that would have on your design. Okay. All right. So coming back here. All right. So I just gave you this when we looked at it, but I gave you the example in case you wanted to see it. But again, you can just use the standard dash that we've been using if you want as well, or you could do that because this is the beginning and this is the end of the block. Okay, so now that we've gone over that, right? So reply with any question, I should maybe say questions regarding the topics of this video, like the end of the semester, any questions about that, the requirements for here, right? And if you have none, right, you can say, I have no questions and I'm moving on to work. But if your student does have a question, and I'll put the points here next, then you want to attempt to answer their question because that will be also worth a few points. Matter of fact, I almost don't want to make it optional for you, right? And I mean, these discussions are really meant to help you prep for the work that's coming ahead. And so, come up with something, I guess is what I would say. Come up with some kind of question or comment about the topics I've covered, the changes, the problem set, how the POE is not actually a separate file, it's built into SQL file. How about these, making sure I'm right, the difference between comments and how do I do those, and in the example I've provided. There's a lot of things you could ask here. Okay, that's it. And then there won't be a separate video for this one. There'll just be, oh, and I haven't published it yet, so I can't even see it in the student view. Okay, all right. Hope that helps you, and I'll talk to you later.